I really wanted to record a video and not just an audio for this conversation. Nothing scripted. If you know me, you know that I really don't do well scripted. I could have everything written out and it just it doesn't work out that way. And it took me a really long time in my life to accept that and embrace that about myself, that for other people, they might need to be scripted or, that works for them and it works for them in their lives. But I'm about authenticity and I'm about power and I'm about truth. And I trust myself and the words that are going to come out, sort of with the idea of the message that I want, and allow it to be imperfect and messy workout hair and summer, too much sun, face. So it's sort of one of those things in trying to explain, to people what I do, how I do it, why I do it, and so many different features and facets and perspectives within this. So I really wanted to take the time to record this one, so that you can see me while I'm telling you this story and while I'm telling you sort of, what's coming up. So a year ago, pretty much a year ago, very, very close on a year, like we're talking 13, 14 months ago, I closed my business partnership. And in that business partnership, we had started to really get away from, just a lot happened, just a pandemic, just so much feels like it happened. But we were really moving a lot away from, I felt like, what I was meant to do and what I was doing. So when that ended, I've been open about this in my retreats, and people who sit in my inner circle work, that I was done, like done. I wanted to go away. I wanted the world to open up and swallow me. I left the fitness industry and now this business, and then I joined partners to grow this thing. And now here I was facing, suddenly it was one thing to choose to leave the fitness industry, but to not sort of making the choices here between a pandemic and just things feeling like whatever that was had run its course, and honoring that, and not trying to force it. I was really sitting there and I was just undecided about what I wanted my future to be. I wanted to continue to do the work that I love to do, but I was dealing with feelings of inadequacy, shame, not good enough, couldn't make it work, all of the things that we would face, many of us, even if we don't talk about them. So I did nothing. For the first time in my life, I gave myself permission to do nothing. I don't know what the future is going to look like. I have no idea. And I've always been like the arrow person, I like to have a direction. I like to know where I'm going. Even if I don't know how, or I don't know all the pieces, I really like to be able to go, okay, this is my GPS, this is where I'm landing. And I really didn't know. And I refused. I was not sure if at this point in time, I was not, heading back to school yet. I was nothing. I was sitting on my patio. I was drinking Prosecco. My husband was off of work. I no longer had a job. He was, mowing the lawn and taking care of yard work. And I was sitting on the patio furniture, sipping on Prosecco as if I didn't have a care in the world. And for the first time in my life, I felt the power of really sitting in that space and not the first time in my life, I'll go back and rephrase that because it's not true. The first time in the last couple of years that I really felt the power of waiting and not being afraid and not letting fear tell me to go get a job or go do this or jump back into doing things in a business sense that I didn't want to do. So I did nothing and I waited. And I didn't go necessarily looking for the answer. I mean, I was journaling, writing, I was thinking about things, but I wasn't, forcing myself through this process of figuring it out, because I do have a process, and I was doing that, knowing that sometimes that process is doing nothing and allowing the thoughts and the feelings that we're having to surface and allowing these things to come up for us. So one morning, it was just there. I worked through this process that I do. And I've been continuing to sort of work through this, through, a mental thing of asking certain questions, walking myself through certain things, having conversations with friends that I could have this kind of conversation with, what's next? I don't fucking know. I might just quit. I might just go, get a job at the CRA or something like everybody else is doing. Or I don't know. I literally don't know. And I was just not panicked. And I don't know about you, but having no income and all this is panic moments for most of us, right? They're truthful panic moments. And I really harnessed that power. And one morning I woke up, I was working on a bunch of programs that I had done for myself, things that I signed up for. And it's really funny because I wasn't planning on telling you this, which is why I say I trust that the right things will come out. This is a sticker that I had, and I believe that the day I made the decision was the day I finished the 600 miles for myself. And you can see that it's called Rise Higher, and it had a phoenix. And for many years, I had this image of writing a program called Phoenix Rising. And that morning I realized, Tanya, girl, you did not come this far to come this far. Like, so what? Process through those feelings and move on. And then I decided to tell people I'm going to continue to move forward. I don't know what it's all going to look like. And so every step I took in the last year kind of was like that. If it didn't feel good, I said no. If it felt good, I said yes. Things were showing up for me that sort of didn't make sense. It was like, fitness made an appearance back into my life, which I thought I wasn't going to be teaching people fitness anymore. I was sort of over that. But I was sort of following the yes, like it felt good, and I felt like I wanted to say yes to some of these things. So I said yes to some of these things. Got asked to coach some people through like their emotional eating and their weight loss stuff, which I hadn't sort of seen in a little while. Did a lot of corporate events in the last year. Decided at the last minute to apply and go back to school full time. Was like, fuck this shit, I'm gonna do this. So it was like one of these things that was just sort of like every step was like, where am I today? Where am I now? Like I didn't really have a future plan. I had a place that I wanted to get, which was, paying off the debt in my business. And I won't go into the details of all that because there's a whole story around a bunch of things there. And I feel like I want to do it justice when I'm ready to tell that. But I did have no income, but, a big pile of money that I had to figure out a way to pay off. And so I, put my head down and I was like, okay, girl, it's time. Like, you're just going to do this. And I do all the processes that I do of like how to get everything I want and how to work through my things and like break through to the other side. And I continued to do that process the entire year. And then I just kept saying yes or no accordingly. Like, does this feel good? I'll do it. Does this not feel good? I won't do it. What feels good? And there were times that I absolutely made a mistake. I like all of us, we go back and we do things based on conditioning. There were times that I was asked to do things and I said yes. And then I would get into it and realize like, shit, I don't want to do this. I said yes because I was in a really good mood, or I don't know why I said yes. Like I just didn't really sit down and intentionally think, is this helping me go where I want to go? So then I had to like do the work to actually get out of those things because they weren't actually the right things. And I had to face, conditioning and belief systems and all that inner stuff that we have to deal with. And on May 6th, I did it. I paid the majority of that business debt that was hanging over me. And that was my May 6th post on Facebook. That was there for quite a long time. And it was a pressure point for me to sort of have that dealt with. And when it was, I felt nothing. Like I was excited and I was happy that it was gone, but I really didn't feel anything. And I was also busy. I was walking into running a retreat the next day. Like within days, I was running my retreat a couple of days later. And then my Woman Empowered event, as well as just a number of other things, clients, regular clients, school. I was in the middle of like just finished exams. I had two sick senior dogs on my hands. So I didn't really feel like I could really process, that it was done, that it was over. I knew here it was over, but my body didn't. And over the coming weeks, I started to notice that I was building that energy of like a push energy, an energy that didn't necessarily feel good. And I ended up taking a break. If you've been following me and you're on my pages or you're on my list, then you know that before I took a vacation, I actually put out that I'm pulling back from everything that I'm doing because I'm not feeling the best. And I don't want to go on my holiday and sleep for my entire holiday because I pushed myself to the brink. And so I took that downtime, which, normally I wouldn't do. And I pulled back from everything. And in that pullback, I started to realize just how hard I worked for the entire year. And not just that, but the loss of the business before that, the loss of my life, the loss of many of the goals and the dreams that I had that couldn't really be processed in that way. And I remembered, the way our body responds to something if we're under massive stress is fight or flight. right? It's normal. We're supposed to have that experience. It's fight or flight. That's why our system works the way it does. It's a survival instinct. So if you feel like your very survival is being threatened, your body's going to operate in a hypervigilant state, and then it comes back to normal. Prolonged hypervigilant state, of course, creates a massive stress state, which can create all kinds of problems, autoimmune disorders, like all kinds of things. But one of the things that I recognized was, as I sort of took that break and I took that step back, I was like, I needed this more than I realized I did, because we get so caught up in the doing and we become so used to doing things the way that we've been doing them that sometimes we don't even realize that, like, we're on all cylinders are firing. And even when we know we need a break, it's not that we can't afford the break or we can't take the break, or we don't have the time or the energy for the break. It's like our system just doesn't know how. So I hit that full stop button. I was like, I'm going to trust that. I'm going to come back to the table and things. And that's not something that's honored in our world, right? Nobody's clapping when we say, I'm going to take like an extended holiday. No one's clapping when we do this. They're clapping when we're exhausted. They clap when we've climbed a mountain. They clap and those are important things. Like, I love climbing mountains, and I clap for myself and I clap for other people who are doing that. But a lot of the times I feel, as a business person, many of the business women and career-driven women that I work with also very much feel the same way, that that's not rewarded in the corporate or career world. And so we feel, shame feelings around taking time off or taking breaks or not taking on, as much work. But I haven't done that for a really long time. Like, I only take on sort of what I can actually handle. And sometimes seasons are going to give us things that we just can't handle anyway. But even in doing that, and taking those step back, sometimes it's really challenging for us to do it. And that's why we know if we can't, we must, right? So with the downtime, and beforehand, and then COVID, so I got sick and I had pretty bad COVID. So it took a lot out of me, and I was pretty much in bed for almost 2 weeks. Like, I was doing things like walking and, doing, other things that I could do. But ultimately I was in bed for quite a long time. And in that time, I just wasn't well enough to really think or focus. So, this becomes that, like, things get to come up, right, in the space. And then that brought me back immediately to why I started this work in the first place. And I recognized that a new path was opening, a new way forward was opening. I was being called to a new level. The way I had been doing things was the way I needed to do them, or the way I could do them in this space of where I was. But now I was being called to a new way, a new path, a new something. What's this going to look like? And I knew that while it might be inconvenient, because it always happens it always happens when we don't want it to happen, but ultimately it happens when we need it to happen. Because here's what I always say to people, and what I always say to my clients, and you can write this down if it feels good to you. We can't go to where we want to go if we don't let go of what's stopping us from going there. We have this idea, like, this is the vision in my mind of what I'm trying to create, or what I'm trying to do, or where I'm trying to go, or the goals that I'm trying to achieve. But I can't get to that place because I'm behaving and engaging in things that are preventing me from going there. So while this might be okay, say at level 6, if you're ready for level 7 won't tolerate the things that you've done at level 6. So you've got to grow, right? So for many people, it's like, I need to see the full staircase, but you can't. You need to, like, take the first step, because the universe is not, like, step 2 is not going to be available to you until you do step 3. Many of us want that big picture. And for the first time in my life, I was really working for the last year, not with an arrow, not with somewhere that I was going. And I felt, I wasn't even wearing an arrow. I knew that it wasn't the time for an arrow. It wasn't time for bigger direction. So even though we know these things, sometimes when our head gets involved, right, it hijacks our emotions and it hijacks our heart and tells us all of what we're doing wrong and, all of this stuff. So I was dealing with a lot of feelings of frustration at that time. They were just, the space allows things to come up that we probably haven't dealt with, that we didn't even know were there. And I have a formula that I use, and it's what I teach in Medicine for the Soul. It's a formula that I take all of my clients through. It's every bit of my work is based on one step of that formula, but my program Medicine for the Soul is based on all 5 of those, where I actually teach people and walk people through those processes. to do this process. But essentially, a lot of where I got started and why I got started in this work was because I was in pain. I was in pain. I was in emotional pain. I was dealing with a life that I didn't love, a business that I felt I was chained to. I no longer knew who my partner was just because we didn't see each other. I mean, I was making work my absolute only priority. He was on the back burner. And then, that was creating all kinds of problems for us. I was obsessed with my body image, how I looked. I was just, I was just caught up in this cycle, and I was so unhappy, and I had everything ultimately that should make someone happy. I had a marriage to someone that I deeply loved. I had, a beautiful home, cars, we had money, investments, savings. I was running a business, that I left the corporate world to run. To all intents and purposes on the outside, I should have been really happy, but I wasn't. I was burned out, I was exhausted, and I was run down. And I was angry. I was angry at life. I was angry all the time. And in order for me to deal with that, I had to learn how. And so I started my work, and I started this journey, through positive thinking, through mindset, through all kinds of those things. And first it was fascinating. It really opened me up to the experience of, wow, we're in control of our thoughts. So I could choose that. So that was all amazing. And I believe in positive thinking, and I believe in, mindset. But here's the thing that I believe is missing, and why I started doing what I do and what I discovered on my own journey. I believe that positive is our natural set point. I think gratitude is our natural set point. I don't think that we should be going to look for positivity, and I don't think that we should have to go find things to be grateful for. So because of that, I believe that a lot of the work that's out there is band-aiding a lot of things, and so we're skipping over, or we're bypassing. I call it spiritual bypassing, or bypassing, the hard stuff. So we're like putting a band-aid on something, and we're telling ourselves that that's okay. It's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. But we're building up this resentment inside of us. We're building up this emotional toxicity. We're having experiences where we're not saying no, or we're settling, or we're compromising in ways that might only seem like this big, courage is lost in the moment that we don't say how we really feel, or we can't express ourselves. So for many of you, if you've been following my journey, if you read my book, then you know that speaking up and speaking my truth and silencing myself is something that I learned to do at a very young age. So sometimes I don't even recognize that I'm doing it. I might actually say, okay, it's fine. And probably the first time it is fine, but when something becomes habit, or, a long-standing problem, then it's a problem, So maybe the first time that your friend is late, or the first time that happens, okay, like you don't mind because things happen. But when your friend is 30 minutes late or 20 minutes late every single time, and then if you don't speak up and say something, and you build that resentment inside of you, then that's going to become a problem between you and that friend, instead of like if you just said to them, look, this doesn't work for me. I like to be on time, or, if it's 5 minutes or something, okay. But like when anything over 10, man, I'm out. Like I'm not, and then eventually you don't want to be with them, but you just push them away, and that's from self-expression. So courage is lost when we can't express ourselves. And what ends up happening is we swallow that down, and then you do it in one place and you start doing it in other places, and all of this stuff. Or let's say that you're compromising and you don't even know that you're compromising. You're probably taking what's coming to you, not necessarily designing or choosing your life. So when that happens, we can sort of feel like oftentimes we're giving too much, or we're over giving, or we're over available. That's definitely one of my challenges. And being open sometimes in these conversations can trigger a little bit of fear in me, because I don't want people on my clients or people that I've worked with to feel that I ever have any regrets, because I never do, because everything is learning, and everything is, all the things. And I'm still always a giver at heart. And when I think about things, my first inclination is to think about how can I give that to someone, or how can I help someone, or, what do people need that I have that I can help them with. But sometimes we can really, overgive and be over available, and we end up, not honoring our own value, and that leaves us in sometimes a feeling of resentment, or, other things. So lots of reasons that we end up building things. Or let's say that you have an experience in life that's traumatic or frightening or scary, or, someone says something to you and it just leaves you like a punch in the gut and it didn't make you feel good. Then what ends up happening for a lot of us is that we internalize it and we start to build on it. And we resent it and we, this is there. But then we're busy. So like we're shoving things down and we just go constantly. So what a lot of the work, if you're having a bad day, a lot of the work that's available is teaching you to go like, just change how you think, just change how you feel, just do this. And I remember doing this work for years. And finally one day actually saying, look, I have spent my whole life being fine with shit. I think that what I really need is I need to actually unpack all this stuff that's in there, find myself, reclaim my, who I am, my power, my voice, all of this stuff, and stop fucking pretending that I'm okay with shit that I'm not okay with. And nobody was talking about emotions at the time that I started this work. Nobody was talking about any of that stuff. Now we see it in a lot of different places. But ultimately, very few places are actually teaching you how to do that or walking you through that process. And so a lot of my writing, that comes in my blogs, sometimes when I'm working through that process, it's like, boom, you can see, where I walk into that ugliness, I walk into that shadow, and then through my processing come out the other side with a message. And a lot of the time when I realize what happened in because I haven't been writing that way, and part of the reason that I haven't been writing that way is because for the last 8 to 9 months, between school and dogs and challenges and life and house problems and all this stuff, I was like operating up here. And it wasn't until my nervous system was given permission and an opportunity and a chance to totally relax, did all that I was holding show itself. So when I wrote, it was like, and it was out. And I had, it's beautiful. I love it when people check on me because I always tell people like, I don't get checked on very often, right? Like I'm the person checking on people, but not everybody kind of, reaches out to check on me. So it's nice when I hear from people to check on it. But at the same time, I was like, oh, there's a ton of people who probably actually really don't know what I do and how I do it because they weren't here for that whole journey that started in, 2012 for me. And while there's a lot of people still here from that journey who absolutely know what I do, if you're on the outside of it, you really don't understand that process. You don't know what I do for you. And you don't know how I do what I do for me. And so my journey is a 5-step formula where I take myself or other people, and I didn't create this to sell. I didn't create this to, anything. I was still back then, I thought that I was going to build a fitness empire, and I was really struggling with energy, motivation, getting up, getting my shit back together. So I was working through those dark emotions, but no one could really help me get out the other side of it. So first I was being told, okay, don't feel it all, skip it over. And then I went through the process of like allowing myself to unpack and feel, but then I was sort of trapped in those feelings and it was an emotional roller coaster. But then, I remember saying like, I've got to also have a way to get out of here, and no one seemed to be able to do it. And this was, after I had, coached and trained under Tony Robbins for 4 years, after I coached and trained under Chloe McDonis, one of the world's leading family therapists and psychologists, Tony Robbins, who's like, one of the biggest names in like the motivation, self-help, empowerment industries. I trained and coached under a ton of people at that point in time, Les Brown, Robin Sharma, some of the biggest names, and still I didn't really have a formula. And what I started to realize is that almost all of this work is done by men for men who do not have the emotional intensity or capacity or storms that, femininity is, and they don't have the hormones and they don't have this stuff. So I started to explore other options. And that was when I found shamanism, which, became my practice that I've now blended with all of my empowerment work. It's all blended together. And to create something that's very unique and very different that doesn't exist, out there on the market, like, what I've created. And the reason that I created that was not to sell it. The reason I created it was because I needed it and it didn't exist. And I was a strong person who always had goals, was always an achiever, a type A overachiever. I was that person, and nobody was able to give me, therapy was just like talking, but like it would be 3 or 4, 6, 7 weeks between appointments. Not only that, you're like just getting to the surface, or you're just getting ready to talk about the stuff, and then it's over, and it's all talk. It's, when we stay at the level of talking, or we're at the level of the mind, it's, you're staying at the level of the problem. You can't solve a problem that's stuck and trapped in your body. I can understand all I want, but if this is trapped in my body and then it's feeding that mindset, it's going to be really hard for me to ever change that. So I started that journey, and that journey led me to the emotional, the permission to unpack, the permission to feel, the permission to what we call the dark night of the soul, the permission to unpack my life's experiences. And so that was when I really started to heal my abuse, my childhood trauma, when I started to look at how I was living my life, what I was really experiencing, the pain in all areas of my life that I was feeling that was just pouring out of me. And it was beautiful, right? It was ugly and it was hard and I was scared when it first started. But then when I gave myself permission to express what I was really feeling in a safe and healthy way, right? Because it has to be safe and healthy, because if it's not, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to bleed on people who didn't cut you. And so you need to have that healthy processing. But then came the point where I was like, okay, I feel like, all this is out, but how do I get out of here? And no one could really help me. And by then I was really in tune with a lot of my gifts, a lot of my own intuition. I was really deeply connected to a lot of things. I've been training under many people and mentors, and I thought there has to be a solution. And I remember hearing that I have it inside of me. So I sat on this office floor. This was 2014, I believe. I was doing the work a couple of years, and I wrote out what I needed. And I was like, wow, okay. So I wrote these 5 steps that I needed to do to be able to get out of this place. And I put it into the processing that day. And within hours of practicing it, I felt empowered. I felt strong. I felt, like I could get up and go do my shit, right? I could get things done. And then I started to apply it. And sometimes that process, that emotional process, was always part of it. And sometimes that could be really long and ugly. But the more that I practiced, the better I got at the whole formula. And that's where I stay. I believe it's any decision that I've ever made from fear, anything that's ever gone wrong in my life, anything is because I didn't do that formula. And that formula works consistently with every single thing I do, with all of my clients, with every program. It never fails to work to bring people from a really disempowered state to a really confident, empowered state, knowing who you are. It's the journey from the head to the heart, and not just the journey from the head to the heart, but also the one that then gives you a formula of who you want to be and how to take action, on that. And so that's the process of my writing. So when you see my blogs or any of my posts going through this power place of fuck that shit, it's because I'm walking into the anger. I'm walking into the rage. I'm walking into the lack of value that I feel, the ugliness that's sitting in there, the darkness that most people want to skip over. But I know that our power and our gifts are on the other side of that, right? So when we're willing to walk into it, unpack it in a healthy way with formulas, with support, with all of those things, then and only then can we really take out the gold that's in it. Then and only then can we really pull from it our power and take back, who we are, and take back parts of ourselves that are lost. And, recently what I realized was when I walked through that process, I realized it was never about any of the things that were happening, but it was about my own standards. Right? It was about my own valuation. Because here's the thing. Beyonce doesn't sit in a room and say, you need to value me. Beyonce doesn't sit in a fucking room where she's not valued, right? So it's not somebody else's responsibility to give us value. It's ours to know our value and to not engage with things that make us feel invaluable. I learned, and this is as much as authenticity as I can give you, a long time ago when I started business. And I never had any problems sort of getting clients, anything like that. It's always when I've been authentic, fully authentic. And, then you want to go into this place where you want to grow, right? You want to grow a business. You want to get in front of more people. You want to help more people. And I learned this system of marketing that never, ever felt good to me. And for 8 years, because I have not done it in, a year or more, because I just finally was like, maybe it's not about what somebody else gets to tell me to do. Maybe it's about me knowing what's right for me. So it's called launching, right? And it's like you watch 2 to 5 videos on a topic, and then you get an invitation into a program and everything else. And I always just didn't love it. I just did not love it. It never felt authentic. And then, but there's many people out there who make billions of dollars a year, doing this thing. So I everybody that I worked with was like, well, this is the formula and this works. So if you are struggling with this formula, then it has to be you. So I was on a very deep emotional journey about figuring out why this formula, why I couldn't do it, what was wrong with me. And then finally I just came to this place where I was like, it doesn't feel good, so I'm not doing it, and that's at the end of the day. Like, it might work for somebody else's model, but it doesn't work for me. And it doesn't feel good to me. And if it doesn't feel good to me, then that's going to translate in what I'm doing. And so a lot of the times, when we do these things that don't feel good to us, they align